Welcome to the Inspiro Podcast, the podcast exploring personal growth, leadership, strategy, communication, and fulfillment. We are your hosts, Jason Luchtefeld and Bill Woodburn. I'm here as a dentist, transitioning into a career to help facilitate individuals and their organizations towards a more fulfilling future.
Hi there, I'm Bill Woodburn, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and licensed marriage and family therapist in Austin, Texas. I'm fascinated by the way people come together to solve problems, whether that's couples or families, dental practices, or organizations. We're going to be exploring a lot of topics, and for us to be able to be free to do that, I have to let you know that this is not intended to be dental advice or counseling advice.
Okay, so when we look at burnout, burnout is like a recognized clinical diagnosis now, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you speak to that? Can you speak to what is it that comprises burnout?
Well, I'm reminded that in Japanese, apparently there is a word for worked himself to death. I don't know the word. I don't know Japanese. But you got to wonder about a culture that's got a word for that. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I think, in a way, we have an easier word, which is burnout, which means you're on your way to that. And it may not be a literal death. It can be an emotional death. It can be a spiritual death. It can be a slow physical death where you're just not eating well, not doing anything, becoming depressed. Okay. So let me target this a little bit. Burnout is about a lot of different things coming together, but the key ingredient is the helplessness. So when we're becoming aware that work does not feel good anymore, and we don't want to go in there anymore, well, there's something that's been overriding our natural sense of self-preservation, our natural sense of taking care of ourselves, usually for a while, and making us go into work and face this thing that we don't want to face, or do this thing over again that we really want to change. And so the thing that I try to get people to start thinking about isn't, how bad my work is and how bad these people are, and whatever. It's like, well, what keeps you helpless? Because if we can relieve that piece, then the rest of it starts to come together pretty well. Now, there's still work to be done. But the problem with burnout is it's a sign that your distress is ratcheting only one way. You're getting more distressed about work and more distressed about work and more distressed, but it's never coming back. We all get distressed about our work, but it's not ratcheted. And the moment the pressure's off or I fix the problem, now I'm pretty good and I want to go back to work. I'm all good. It's burnout is that ratchet thing. It's like, okay, it was a bad day, but it doesn't go back to being a good day. The next one's a bad day, doesn't go back to being a better day. The next one's even worse day, doesn't go back to being a better day. Mm-hmm. Each time it ratchets up, and pretty soon we can't take it. Mm-hmm. So it's the ratchet part that we want to take a look at. What keeps it from coming back to being a good day?
I think a challenging piece with burnout is how subjective it is. Mm-hmm. An environment you might thrive in, I might burn out in.
Yes.
And vice versa. And so we keep harping on this, but this concept of self-awareness and what is contributing to this helplessness, what is contributing to this feeling and not being able to reset is really critical. And I think oftentimes not something we can do alone. I think when we get to that point, we need professional help. We need an appointment to talk through it with somebody that can help us to verbalize it, to get out the feelings that are there, to become aware of things that we're not aware of. Mm-hmm. So much that attempting it alone or without a professional can be dangerous.
Yes, actually, I very much agree. And if you're starting to head toward burnout, You don't necessarily need a professional because you're seeing it. But once you're in it, part of the problem of burnout, and you were talking about that issue with not seeing the team is that it changes our perception. So the team could be in fact changing, but if we've burned out to a certain extent, we can't see the helpful change. We can't hear the helpful words. We can't, see the smiles anymore. We don't have a place for the patient's compliment on how well we did. It starts to change us. And the sad thing, it changes us in a way that doesn't allow things to get better.
Instead of beer goggles, we have burnout goggles.
Have burnout goggles. Absolutely. Absolutely. And suddenly we can't see the very things we sometimes need so desperately to see.
Yeah. So then I guess that then makes sense why when we get to that place, we also are not normal things that we find enjoyable are not as enjoyable. Like everything gets muted. Everything is, we interpret different. Yeah, that's a fascinating piece of it, that neurochemistry, I guess, like switches, and that's why it's so much work to get out of it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. As far as the brain, what's happening in burnout is our brain is turning on the threat response and keeping it on. And now that thing we used to enjoy or feel accomplishment from, or at least it was a good day and we went in and did our job. Now, for our brain, it's become a threat. Maybe not a high level threat, but enough to keep enough of the chemicals going, enough of that it starts to change our perspective. Because we know, as a human being, when I'm under threat, it changes the way I see the world. Pretty soon, everything looks like a threat. Everything is about life and death. And I stay tense. My breathing changes. My heart rate changes, a whole bunch. And it's like, okay, so that's the piece of burnout, which is like, I feel under threat, whether I am or not. I feel it.
Yeah. So something we haven't talked about in a while, but would be something that would be helpful prior to getting to that step or stage of being actually burnt out, would be journaling.
Oh, absolutely.
Spending some time on a daily basis, journaling how the day went, and even more specifically, what are we thankful for today? What went well today? Being able to have that frame of reference of, yeah, not everything went perfect, but some things went okay. Some things went well.
We can fight our brain to tell it that we're not under threat. And that the gratitude exercise, really, if you want to take it down to a more neurobiological level, it's reassuring our brain we're not under threat and they don't have to make those adjustments because those are messing with us. So there's not a threat here, guys. And part of the way I'll prove it to you is I'm going to consciously think about and imagine each good thing, each thing I am grateful for, each thing that worked during this day. Because luckily, as human beings, we're not totally instinct driven. We can decide we're going to let in that compliment we got from a patient. The other piece is, I find in journaling, it's really great if you have a vision, have a mission, particularly if you have a personal mission. If you have something you're working on. There's a quote, I'm using it on my personal email tag, which says, it's a lucky person who wakes up in the morning, puts their feet on the floor, heads in a direction, and thinks it still matters. What gets us through work when it's not always good and when it takes a lot out of us is we think it matters. And when you stop thinking it matters, okay, now we got a problem. Can we get back to why was I doing this? Which might be, why did you become a dentist? Why do you have a practice in this community? Why do you have this practice? Why did you hire these people? I mean, something's going on. There was a purpose. There was a reason. You were trying for something. Can you get back to that? I was actually asked. I was expressing this opinion in a workshop, and somebody said, "Well, what's your goal?" I said, "I'll give you my short goal, world peace." And they all laughed. I said, "No, really. You see, one of the things I know is that people who are hurting, people who have serious unresolved emotional issues, people that are not clear about their lives and their loved ones, hurt people. And people that are healed emotionally and have a level of clarity don't hurt people." I'm working for world peace here, guys. And I sometimes have to remind myself that, yeah, each person that I get some level of success on is less likely to go out and screw up the world.
There is a trail runner that runs ultra trail runs, marathons, etc. And he says something similar about the benefits of being an ultra runner and how it is getting us one step closer. The more people that become ultra runners, the less violent the world, because nobody has the energy to be violent.